Should be good fun. Did you guys get rain out west today, Brian and Janice?
Yeah, we got a little bit last night and early this morning. I don't know how much, but it was good.
We had a very light frost here this morning.
That's not always the best thing.
It won't hurt. It's nothing that matters at the moment. It's only very light.
Awesome. We're live where we need to be. Alrighty. Well, g'day everyone, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, all the boys and girls are over 18 tonight. Welcome to the Oak Barrel's Aussie Whisky Get Together, episode 2. Where just because there's global pandemics and border closures doesn't mean we can't all get in a room and drink some excellent Aussie whiskey together. And let's be honest, we only really do that once or twice a year anyway. So this is a pretty good opportunity to do it and all be in the same place. My name is Scott Fitzsimons and I look after all the things whiskey related here at the Oak Barrel. And I'm sitting in the dungeon in the bowels of the Oak Barrel here tonight, joined by... what are we going to be? We're actually going to be 6 distillers from 4 distilleries all around Australia tonight, presenting a whiskey each, talking about their distilleries, what 2020 means, and where we all go from here. It's getting towards the end of the year, so we were talking just before we went live then about a little bit of that 2020 fatigue. And Christmas, December, you start to be ramping up. It's not always the case in 2020. There's a bit of fatigue going on. What's the best way to fix that is to have 1 or 2 whiskies. So we have sent out some packs. If you were lucky enough to grab a pack, we're going to be drinking along with you tonight. And I'll post the order of that in the Facebook and the Zoom in a second. But even if you're not, didn't get a chance to grab a pack tonight, feel free to ask questions, talk rubbish, and we will have a little bit of fun. And g'day to Whiskey is My Jam and Gary from down in Tassie joining in tonight to have a little bit of a chat. Ladies and gentlemen, on the Get Together, how are we doing?
Good. Great, thanks, yes.
Good. Good evening, everybody.
I'm obviously in Sydney and I'm inside, and that's a very good thing at the moment because it is very grey and rainy and set in. And I think, Dean, down on the Victorian-New South Wales border, you seem to be winning the weather stakes at the moment.
Yeah, it's beautiful out here at the moment. It's about 28 degrees.
Too hot for me.
Come on, Peter.
I've got to move, gradually work my way into it. Don't want it this too fast. She was about 25 here a couple of days ago. Now it was too hot all of a sudden. After
I was actually in Adelaide yesterday, and it was 32 over there.
Oh,
that's too hot.
We're starting to get into some exciting times, and a big shout out to all our Victorian friends with things reopening. I know in particular Elysian is back open now, and Whisky and Almond's opening very, very short, which is very exciting. Before we get too much further, Dean, don't walk too far on your thing there because you'll step into Victoria accidentally.
I'm about 100 metres off it.
Yes. What's it been like being on a border in 2020, particularly when you have such a great cellar door and setup there?
Yeah, it's been very tough, but I think it's really important to also recognise that while we've been doing it tough on the border and, we've only been getting half of the, usual patronage we usually get, there's a lot of people in Melbourne have been doing it a lot worse than us. So in some respects, it's hard, but we've been very fortunate.
Yeah, awesome. It's been the end. We've certainly got some stories to tell around that. We do have a bit of a New South Wales flavour tonight, but New South Wales is a pretty big place, so they're all different stories to tell from what's happened in 2020. G'day to Steve McGarry and Dan from out in Dubbo as well. Thank you for joining us on the Facebook tonight. But tonight is about drinking, and as I say, if you don't have the packs with us tonight, feel free to crack something Australian and share a dram with us. But I think we're going to move in order of flavoured profiles and get into some pretty big whiskies, which we have coming up tonight. But I think we might go west from where I am, go west, young man, and find ourselves where no one can hear you karaoke at 2 a.m. At the Blackgate Distillery with Brian and Janice. And And guys, I mean, you've got a bit of a setup there. You do some big events throughout the year that you obviously haven't been able to do this year. How has 2020 been for Blackgate, and what does the rest of the year look like?
It started out pretty bleak, but yeah, sort of became good quite quickly. It's just been crazy. We didn't get to run the World Whisky Day event that we normally do, but that was a sort of a blessing as well as a bit of a rest, because that is a big event to run. We're disappointed, but sort of
relieved.
Yeah. The rest of it, everything's been going okay. Our sort of production's been down. That's my fault. Just haven't been into it. Had some other jobs, and it's the last part of the year. It's been going really well. We're just about ready to knock off though. It's starting to get a bit warm, so we're going to finish up.
Yeah, I think as we sort of touched on there, there's a little bit of 2020 fatigue going on, but as I said, there's only one way to fix that fatigue, and I'm going to fix that with a glass of whiskey, and in this case, and a pair of vatting. I'm lucky enough to have the very last remnants of the bottle here, and I'll post the link into the places people want to have a closer look at the bottle. But there's been like a few different generations of Blackgate. There was the very early releases, which were single cask and sort of really started to build the DNA of what Blackgate was and what that style was. Then, we're sort of, I consider almost generation 2 at the moment with those big peated whiskies that you've been distilling for a few years. Where does this sort of fit into there? Because this is something a little bit different in terms of what we've seen from the distillery traditionally.
Yeah, it's a bit of a flashback back to version 1 of the early whiskies, like it's the 100-litre format sherry cask, which was the first sort of stuff we did. But being a vatting, it makes it a little bit different. We've got a bit more flavour in there, bit of complexity. But you're spot on. So that's like I say, flashback to stage 1, and we're in stage 2 now. We're releasing peated whiskies from 100-litre format port and sherry casks. But yeah, this has been a flashback to the early releases, I would say.
Yeah. And so, in terms of this was distilled from cask distilled between December 2015 and April 2016. So this is essentially a relatively old release from Blackgate.
Yeah. So it's probably the oldest release we've done. So the youngest whiskey in there is 4 years old, and the oldest is about 4.5, I think.
Yeah. Because I mean, your stuff out of Mandurin gets to 40 degrees during the day, and then in the morning you have to hit the pipes with a hammer to have a shower because it's frozen over.
In winter,
yeah. Your cask must cook. So I mean, like, how much, does a summer? So how much effect does a summer have on your whiskies? Like barrels you're laying down now, will they maybe get to 2.5 or 3 years where stuff that might get laid down in 6 months' time see a longer period? Do you see big differences between summer and winter maturations?
I sort of haven't looked that much into it. I don't monitor. I used to monitor the casks fairly heavily, but as I got more and more, I just lost track of everything. So, and it was a big night to try and taste a few of them. So it just sort of occurs naturally now. Whatever happens, and we just bottle when they're ready. So yeah, I'm not real technical into how long it takes or whatever happens, but they definitely change over summer for sure.
Just ready when it's ready.
Yeah.
And half the time we only look at them when we think we're getting low on stock anyway. So,
couple of comments coming through. Daniel's sipping on a BG22, which is a little while ago now. That's and Gary's got some Fanny's Bainey's glass with a bowl of homemade rum and raisin ice cream using Blackgate rum. So it's a little bit all over the place at the moment in terms of the uses, but on the nose for me, this is classic Blackgate. It's got that, that richness, that sort of golden syrup, that treacle, that brown sugar, very reminiscent of, as you say, those early releases. Now, this is a vatting of 2 casks, which is not something that you've done a huge amount of in terms of releasing in the past. What was the inspiration or the reasoning behind doing some sort of vatting for this one?
Just that consistency of flavour, so you can get a bigger batch. And we've just had the luxury of having more than one cask ready at a time. That was the bottom line.
Yeah. And I mean,
it's actually 3 casks, that one.
Yeah.
3 casks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this is 634 bottles in the run. This is the biggest release Blackgate's ever done.
Whiskey, yeah.
Sure. Which is ridiculous. Let's be honest. That is stupid.
Took us a few days.
Yeah. To label or?
Yeah, label and bottle.
Yeah. But I mean, like, so this must have been like right at the end of that period before you got into distilling exclusively peated stock. Is that about on the cusp there?
Exactly. Yeah, that's our second last unpeated release. I've got one single 100-litre cask left, which will obviously be a single cask, and then after that, everything's peated for the foreseeable future, or at least 3 years. I've distilled some unpeated late in the year this year. But yeah, you won't see that for another 3 years or so.
And like, there's, as far as I'm aware, you're the only distillery in Australia that has done that. We only do peated things for a little bit. Was it just actually like what was the reasoning behind maybe laying down a little bit of unpeated this year?
Oh, because we ran out.
I saw Janice laugh before I finished that question because she knew what the question was going to be and knew the answer.
Yeah, we sort of realised we cut out half our customers by only doing peated, so we thought we probably should go back to the unpeated for a while.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm like, this is like going back to cask 5 and those really early ones that I fell in love with. This is very much that DNA. But while I'm enjoying this, and other people are as well, do you want to, and Mike says, absolutely delicious as expected. Blackgate whiskey is always rock. So there's a couple of ticks there from Mike. Do you maybe want to go back? It's been a few years now that you both have been able to work full-time on the distillery. It's now the full-time gig now. What is it like? I mean, 2020 is a little bit of a weird year, obviously, but like, what's it been like working in a distillery full-time now that you've had a bit of a chance to spend a bit of time with it? Has the novelty worn off yet, or are you still enjoying it?
Only because of the way the year's been this year. I'm sure it'll be fine again next year. But I always say it doesn't feel like going to work. We just sort of get to poke around in the shed and travel a bit and do different things, and it doesn't really feel like a job. So that's good. And the other side of it is we had a really good year last year as far as sales go. So that sort of carried us through the first half of this year. And no, we haven't lost enthusiasm. Only this year.
Yeah, we've been on a bit of a downer this year, but it's all coming good.
Yeah. There is quite famously, because there's not a cellar door as such, but you can call up and say, hey, I'm going to be in the area, will anyone be around type thing. And famously, the World Whisky Day festival, and I call it a festival out of Blackgate, is quite a famous event with live bands and camping and very responsible alcohol consumption. Didn't happen this year. Can we expect it to come back 10 times as big next year?
If everything allows, if we're allowed to do it, for sure. And just on that, the sign always says closed. We don't open, but Janice has just set up the online booking if you want to come and have a tasting. So you just go online and you can book the time. And the beauty of that is if we're going to be away, we just block it all out, and then you don't get anyone turning up. It's really set up. Yeah, next year for sure, Scotty. It'll be on. Yeah,
awesome. And Dean did mention just as we were going live before that he got to spend a little bit of time in Adelaide as borders are starting to close down and that sort of thing. Where is the first place Blackgate goes on holidays when you can go back to doing that sort of thing?
I think we're going to slip up the New South Wales coast and then into Queensland. We've got a mate that moved up there last year, so I want to go and see him. And we've obviously got outlets to see while we're there.
Yeah, awesome. Now, like what I love about the Blackgate spirit as well is just that sort of, you get that house style, which I think is maybe coming a little bit from that direct fired still, where you get that brown sugar and that treacle, but it's got like a real weight to it. as well, and that sort of helps promote the finish. Works exceptionally well in sherry casks. It would be remiss of me not to mention and get the input of the Captain Sherry Cask in Australia, who's with us tonight as well. But before I throw to Valero, where do you source your sherry casks? Are they sherry? Are they a para casks? Like where are you getting your barrels from?
The early ones were all from SA Cooperage, and they would have been from McWilliams Winery in South Australia, all the 100-litre format ones. And then in the different manifestations, we've gone into different casks as well. We've gone into larger format and bourbons, and that's a whole other story. But yeah, the sherries would all be from McWilliams in South Australia.
Yeah, excellent. And just watching the Facebook chat here, Bree Atwood says Queensland is a very funny way of pronouncing Yakandanda for your next holiday. So I think you might need to go there. I want to just on that topic, we might not try the Joadja whiskey next, but I might bring Valero into this conversation, because actually we're not going to try sherry cask Joadja tonight. But Valero, you've obviously got a huge experience with sherry casks and actual Spanish, Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherry casks.
Yes.
How have you found Australian whiskies, like almost as a consumer rather than as a distiller? Whiskies matured in like Australian Apera casks and then European sherry barrels. Like, can you see a distinct difference into what they do to the whiskies?
Yeah, very, very little. There seems to be something, I suppose, because I was actually born in Spain, and I was brought up around sherries. Then when you then translate that to a whiskey, for some reason, there's some receptors that I may have that pick up a slight difference. Now, descriptors are going to be difficult because I can't quite put my finger on it, but I can detect something. Now, whether it's something about the barrels being from Spain as opposed to, say, South Australia, for example, I don't know. Or whether it's just a Joadja thing. Maybe our environment at Joadja is more conducive to maturing or aging our whiskey in a slightly different way. But certainly any Australian whiskies that I've tried with sherry or Apera notes, I still believe that there may be something in the new make spirits going to be different. The way that I do my cuts may be a little bit to someone else. So at the end of the day, the barrel should be pretty similar. But for some reason, whether again it's a barrel issue or whether it's a new make issue, difficult to put my finger on it, frankly.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, because you do often get that, and we, as an Australian whiskey industry, by default, are the industry that uses the most Australian Apera casks. We're not necessarily sending great quantities of Australian Apera casks to Scotland or Japan or America or anywhere like that. So it's interesting to get that sort of insight into whether there is an Australian sherry flavour. But you're right, the spirits are very different and that sort of thing. Thank you very much for that whiskey, Brian and Janice. That was very, very enjoyable, as all the whiskies have been. Before we get on to, we might move on to the Remnant next, but before we get onto that, outside of personal travel plans, and without maybe giving secrets away, which I know we're not allowed to do, what can we expect from Black Cat before the end of the year and early next year?
Yeah, we've got some ripper releases coming up. We've got the 520s peated, which is really exciting. That's imminent. That's in the next couple of weeks. Then there's a secret third fill peated that we did, which is magnificent. It was a sherry, whiskey, rum, and then peated whiskey. So that's going to be out in probably early December. And there's something else I was excited about. Oh yeah, we've got another overproof rum, which is magnificent too, out of a large format port cask.
Yeah.
It's two tawny casks. Yeah.
Okay.
Those third fill runs, do you do anything to the casks in between, or do you just dump it and fill back up again?
Straight back in, yeah.
Yep.
Do you leave maybe a little bit of what was in there previously, or is that
not on purpose? I just don't tip it up enough, or often they'll sit there for a few weeks before we use them again.
So some famous Scottish stories of maybe not as much sherry was not all of it was tipped out of that barrel before it was refilled with whiskey. There you go. Didn't hear it from me. No, didn't. Whatever. But look, that's all very exciting. For those who don't know, the 520s is a amalgamation of 5 20-litre barrels, which has been quite. With the original 520s was quite infamous, Then there's been the 620s, which was sort of the refill version, and then the peated one. And I think Mike going, yes, please, all in capitals. I think he's got his caps lock button stuck there. Might be in reference to the 520s peated. These casks will third fill now for those 20 litres. Insight into how that one might be looking?
Yeah, it's going really well.
Yeah. And I know, Brian, you've got a bit of a penchant for big smoky whiskies.
Yeah.
That might be where your heart lies. In terms of are you pretty happy with how that one's looking?
Yeah, it's going. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm more excited about this other third fill, this 100-litre third fill that's going to be released. That's probably my favourite peated whiskey that's come out of Blackbat for sure.
Yeah, excellent. Well, you've got my phone number. When all that's ready, you know where to find me. But thanks guys for coming along, and now you can sit back and drink for the rest of the night and heckle other people. So that's it's good to go first. You get all the hard work out of the way.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, thanks.
We might now move on to, again, moving in flavour profile to something. We're up at 47% for that first one. We're going down a little bit to 44% to Peter Bignell. And mates, we keep running into each other in these Zoom rooms throughout this year.
And nearly every time I have technical problems.
Well, no,
we got it right this time, just in time.
Touchwood, this one's going well.
Yep,
I can see all your awards behind you there, or your icon of whiskies. It hasn't happened this year, so if you won anything last year, technically you're still that icon moving forward. But how's the farm and how's the distillery?
We've had an incredible season as far as farming goes. There's a lot of rain just at the perfect time, and there's grass. There's clover up to my knees at the moment, and I've got no sheep. I had trouble with insurance with shearers, and I was told that to spend a couple of days shearing, it's going to cost me $10,000 in insurance. So I've leased them all to my brother. So he's looking after them now. So but right at the moment, there's no sheep here. I'm getting a truckload coming in tomorrow to start chewing out around the sheds and stuff. But there's grass everywhere. The rye crop is way up over the top of the fence. They had a really good crop this year. Great, a lot of very, very good germination percentage, and it's way up over the top of the fence at the moment. But that won't be harvested until into January. But farming's really good. Wool prices are pretty good. A little bit up and down, but they're still pretty good. And meat prices, unfortunately, I don't have any sheep, but they are phenomenal at the moment. But as far as farming for the distillery goes, it's been a great season. I actually bought an irrigator last season and didn't need to use it.
Yeah, that's it's a rare and unique saying in recent years. The words "good" and "season" being put next to each other, so it's very good to hear. Just a couple of comments coming through. G'day to Alex Darlenberg, who says g'day to Josh Walker from the Timboon Distillery. Says that you might need to send some of that third fill Blackgate to him just for quality control, just to make sure you're not poisoning anyone. And a huge g'day to Kathleen, who says g'day to everyone, and particularly Peter, who, if you've got one of the packs with us tonight, if you did some of our very early virtual tastings and they were stuck together by sticky tape and pretty average, that's because I packaged them. The very professional looking ones with details and correct names and everything on them. That's a big thanks to the team at Nipper Courage, who break it all down and put it all together for us. So a big thank you to them. But Peter, this next whiskey is, it's not Belgrove. It's something a little bit different. This is the Remnant, a new release. There's a few people you're working on this one with, but do you maybe want to give a quick overview of what Remnant is and how it came to be?
Yes, there's, we got in focus, have we? Yep. So the story really starts way back, if I don't bore everybody. My great-grandparents owned a farm near Bothwell called Nant, and I used to play in an old flour mill there on the property when I was a kid. And anyway, about, 15 odd years ago, I got a job there restoring the old flour mill. There's millstones, wooden cogs, and a water wheel. I repaired all that. I actually got offered a job as distiller there at the end and turned it down. I didn't want to work for that bloke. Anyway, he came back here to my farm. And anyway, as everybody knows, or a lot of people know, that the barrel investment scheme there went belly up in a big way, big way. And anyway, a lot of barrels became available just right at the end of last year. And so I got my eldest son, suggested to him we should buy a few of these. And he said, oh, yeah, that sounded a great idea. So he got a couple of other his business mates to come along. And so we formed the Remnant Whisky Company. And we bought a lot of the barrels. We moved nearly 300 of them down to Belgrove, and I had to extend my bond store a lot. A lot of the barrels as individual barrels weren't all that good. The previous two owners had picked all the eyes out of them. Some of them been diluted to 45%, although some of those 45s were absolutely delicious, even at 45. But what we've managed to do is blend a whole lot of barrels together. So just put it simply, if you can have after 6-7 years of some barrels that old, they've gone too woody. It's not like Scotland. Things can get way over mature here. So there's a few there that are just too woody. So what you do is blend that one with one that hasn't got enough wood in it, and you end up with something really nice in between. But there's lots and lots of flavours like that. It's not just the wood notes. That's just an easy way to describe it. So this first batch, which we call the Scoundrel, which you might realise why it's called that, is a vatting of 12 different barrels. We initially had 10 in the vat, and I started tasting and thought, no, this is not quite right. So we added another barrel, and then getting closer, another barrel, and then that was it. And I thought I might be able to go a little bit more. So I tried one more barrel. No, it just ruined it. The whole thing just went flat, just one more barrel. And so we left it at 12. And did some dilution tests and worked out that 44 was where it hit the sweet spot. And that diluting bit, it's amazing. You can go up or down 1%, and there's big difference in the change in the flavour. I'm doing some brandy diluting here at the moment, and just 1% can make a huge difference. So and that batting is a bit over 2,000 bottles. They're 500 ml bottles. We're about halfway through selling those at the moment. And we just started working on the next fatting. This next fatting should be even better, because we've got 24 barrels there that we're working our way through.
Yeah,
it's nice big releases.
Yeah, I mean it's quite fascinating. Like this from the distillery in question, it certainly carries the hallmarks of that spirit and that those whiskies that they make. But it's almost got this jamminess, this lushness to it, particularly on the nose. When you go into a barrel house and you see 300 different barrels, how did you approach that task of dividing them up? And do you go through, taste everything, and then go, okay, that goes into group A, that goes into group B? Like, how do you start that process?
Yeah, we just make tasting notes of everything. Look, I don't do it all myself. I've got someone who's very good at tasting. I can do about 3 barrels, and my taste buds are stuffed, and I need to go away for half an hour and come back and do a few more. But I've got to Nathan Reeves. He helps me with them, and he can do 40 or 50 barrels before his palate gets tired out, which is fantastic. So what he does, he just does some test blends, and he brings them to me and says, right, what do you think of that? Then I just sit on them for a few days and make my comments and say, no, we need a bit more of this, or that's a bit too much. And so he'll go away and find some more barrels and do more test blends, and then we'll sit on for a few more days until we work out where it should end up.
Yeah, I find my palate tends to go after the 3rd barrel, but I tend to enjoy it more after that.
Yes,
it gets more and more fun.
Yeah, you're on different. You're a consumer end of it. I'm the one that's got to make this stuff. And if I could go out somewhere and have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 tasting barrels, that'd be fine. But when I've got to really concentrate on what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to achieve, it's actually quite hard work on your palate. If you do too many, my palate's just shot for another whole day sometimes.
Yeah, oh, look, there's no illusions here that I definitely chose the right end of this business to be involved in, which is this one, the drinking and consuming end. That blending and distilling stuff looks like hard work.
Yeah, the blending bit's really interesting because I've heard people talk about they have a dram that's their calibration dram, and that's when they start at an event, and then they work their way from there. Referring back to that all the time. I don't do that at all. I'll to have a little taste first thing in the morning, even before breakfast sometimes, only tiny little taste. And then at morning tea time, before and after morning tea, before and after lunch. Not every single session, but I try to eat it, tried before meals, after meals, so that I've got a great range of previous flavours in my mouth to try and find out what works. And there might only be one, you might want something after tea, and that's the only time it works. There's another whiskies that only work at breakfast time. I'm trying to make something that works all day long.
Yeah, I've got a few of those breakfast whiskies. How much of a different process is it? Obviously, you haven't distilled these whiskey. With the Belgrave whiskies, you've been very involved with that, from the farming side of it to the distilling to the maturation. You're choosing and controlling all aspects of that. When you come into a process like this, when all you've got is essentially the reasonably finished product that you need to polish up into something worth bottling, is there an element of letting the whiskey decide where it wants to go, or do you come in with a bit of okay, these 6 barrels work really well, how can I keep that flavor building using other things? Like, how do you, do you feel like you are curating existing flavors, or are you sort of dominating and telling things what they want to be?
I guess it's a little bit of just suck it and see. But I've got an aim. I know the vaguely what I want. I want that something with a really big, rich middle palate. And sometimes you start blending a few, and it's got a nice start, nice end, and just the middle's just missing. And so you've got to put some more in there. But I'm not after a particular flavour. I'm not actually very good at describing. I'm getting better, but saying that this tastes like raspberry jam or something like that, or a certain type of honey. But it's just honey to me. But I'm not very good at hanging names on it. But I just know what works with balance. That's all I'm really after. Something that'll balance really well.
Yeah. And so you mentioned you're working on the second batch now. Is it much different to what the first one is? Like, is there quite a wide variety of flavors in those barrels that you acquired?
Yes, we've got many more to pick from. I think this one's going to be quite a bit better. Mind you, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this first one. This one was we purposely tried to make it a relatively light whiskey. That's why we're at 44. That not something that really punches you in the face. But I think this next one, we're trying to up the intensity a bit for sure. You're frozen there, Scotty. Scotty, the only one that's disappeared. Everybody else is moving. Anyone else hear me?
Yep.
Don't know where Scotty's gone.
Oh, there he is. He's frozen, yep.
He's frozen. There's Dean back again. Hasn't got his microphone on.
Here he goes.
I can hear you. I can hear you, Peter.
Yes, I've got your microphone on now. Yes.
Did you say that there were 500 bottles with that last release, Peter?
No, over 2,000.
Okay, 2,000. Yep. So with this next release of 24 barrels, how many bottles do you think you'll get out of that?
Yeah, well, you get roughly, probably nearly 100 litres per barrel. Most of them 100 litre barrels. A couple of 200 litres in this one, or 225s. But we just say per barrel, we'll just say very roughly averages out at 100 litres a barrel. By the time you dilute it back again, that water you had basically takes care of the angel share, fills the barrel back up again. And
what percentage do you think that this next release will come in at?
Yeah, well, we'll just have to see. Yeah, we try and bring it in the mid 40s there somewhere. But once we get it to where we want to, the average flavour at about 45, then we'll just decide whether we cut it back a little bit more or not.
Yeah,
just by doing dilution tests, and it's amazing. You can put water in there, taste it, and then come back a week later, and it's changed quite a lot. So we don't rush at the decisions on where the water's got to be. It really does change quite a lot over a week or two.
And are you finding that it's a lot harder to try and deal with someone else's whiskey as opposed to your own that you've been dealing with for, a decade now? Yeah,
yes, just 10 years, yes. No, I actually quite like it because I'll tell you the truth, I just get bored very easily. And that's why my Belgrave stuff, so many different styles of whiskey that I've got there. It's not just rye, or it's not just one type of rye, it's all sorts of different things. And this is just another little challenge, something else to get a bit creative about. And like I said, I just like a change. I just get bored so easily.
Well, if you want a challenge and a change, you're more than welcome to come up and run weddings up here for us in Corowa. That's there's nothing more challenging than dealing with brides every weekend. So
you can have that on your own.
Oh, you said you wanted a challenge and a change. You're more than welcome. Come and visit us.
I would get married if Peter Bignell was like, directing proceedings.
Oh,
I'd be very keen on that. Actually.
Celebrate.
Yeah.
I used to be good at organising other people, but I don't know. I just seem to have lost it these days. I was group captain of the fire brigades here for years and years, and organising people, but I'm just over that now.
Sorry guys, I fell out of fell through the earth there for a second, but thank you for picking up the slack. And who would have thought distillers can talk to each other without leading? So thank you very much for keeping that going. But Peter, I think it's an excellent whiskey. It's something very different to, obviously it's not Belgrave and it's going to be very different off the thing, but even the flavour profile, that very tropical fruit, jammy, marmalade-y sort of notes with that sort of back end caramel and, burnt toffee sort of thing. It's a very, there's not too many Australian whiskies out there that are doing that sort of thing. So I think it's quite a unique offering to sort of look at. And obviously the bad story that it's come from is still an ongoing story. But it is good to see a little bit of a silver lining, come out of it, particularly in a year that we are scrounging around at nightclub floors at 3 a.m. looking for silver linings. So it's been excellent. I mean, how's the feedback been for Remnant as a whole, not just for this first release, but like the concept as a whole?
The investors that we bought the barrels from, they were pretty happy. We got great feedback from lots of them. Some we didn't hear from. They just took their money, and a lot of them were just sick to death of the whole story and just wanted to be done with it. But no, we've had some very, very positive feedback. All the investors, they get a bit of the whiskey as well as part of the deal.
Yeah, awesome. Mate. Congratulations. And we actually sold out of the first one, so I'm going to have to shoot you an email tomorrow and get some more in. But we, looking forward to what happens next as well with release 2 and all that sort of thing. So
I'll just quickly show you. There's in here's the run out of power cord. You can see some of the barrels. These are the next lot that we've got here lined up, ready to chuck in that. There's here 1,500 litre vat, and we've got another 1,000 litre one to move in here very shortly. So we've only got 6 barrels in there at the moment, but over the next couple of weeks we'll have most of these barrels in there. Some we'll chuck the whole barrel in. There'll be a few that we'll probably end up missing out, and actually just a few of those barrels, about half a dozen of them, we're going to do a more exclusive blend. So it'll be more for those people that really, the whiskey nerds that want something a lot more punchy.
Yeah, excellent. And just finally, when people come and visit the distillery and take a look through, do you try and pass all those barrels off as Belgrave to make it look like you've been busier in the last 5 years than you have been?
They've all got stencils on the end of them. The Black Spot Distillery.
Okay, fair enough.
The original name has been sprayed out with a black spot. No, I don't pretend they're mine.
Yeah. No, excellent look and excellent work as always. And always, I love it, even if it's virtually, just seeing you in the distillery, because there's always something interesting to look at the back shelf or on the wall or something. There's never a boring backdrop with you. So
there's aimed at a whole lot of Japanese whiskies there. Yeah, we've got a few more up. There's stuff everywhere in here.
Awesome. And we look forward to being back down there. Now, we have spoken to Peter, obviously, a few times this year, and it's very, very rare that we get anywhere in the world a distillery that grows its own grain and makes its own whiskey, which is what Belgrave has done with its rye. It's also then incredibly rare to have 2 distillers in the same virtual room doing the same thing, which is my segue, very clean and not graphic at all, segue into Joadja and Valero Jimenez with what is something very, very special in terms of talking about batch 10 of the Joadja paddock to bottle, which is in the tasting kits for those lucky enough to have snagged one of these. Valero, g'day, and welcome back to the Oak Barrel, albeit via the power of the internet. But we were all very, very excited in sort of February and March as the terrible, terrible summer holidays we had were coming to an end, and we were very, very optimistic about a lot of winter tourism and travel and that sort of thing. How has the 6 months since then sort of gone for you?
A bit of a double-edged sword. So what happened, of course, at Joadja, we rely a little bit on tourism. It's a heritage site, and people come along and go on heritage tours. And of course, they get to see the distillery and do a tasting. That was pretty much wiped out, pretty much not only during the bushfire season, but then we had, of course, COVID. Well, we had some floods in February, and then we had COVID, of course, up until about June before they started to relax some of the restrictions. And then it all came back. We're really, really thankful that so many people are really traveling out to regional areas and visiting fairly remote places. So again, the beginning, a little bit scary, but I think now we can really, again, we're blessed that the public are coming out and really supporting regional areas. The good news though, is that during the time where I was pretty much in lockdown here in Joadja, managed to get down a fair bit of whiskey, laid down a lot of barrels.
Yeah, excellent. And when we were on the phone a few weeks ago, there seemed to be a bit of work going on in the background that I could hear racks and things going up. Is that sort of, was that planned, or is that just you guys expanding and getting bigger and bigger?
Yeah, certainly expanding. Yeah, I think what happened was we've just got a huge selection of more sherry barrels coming from Spain, and I don't know if I don't recall that you've been down here to Joadja, but there are a couple of lofts, and underneath is fairly limited room, and I couldn't get some of the standard barrel racks to fit under there, so we had to make our own. So not only do we have our own barley and our own spring water, we have our own racks. Everything's made here. So yeah, that's probably the noise you could hear on that day, making some barrel racks for another 70. I think we've got about 78 or 79 sherry barrels, 250 litre barrels, a lot bigger now. There's a purpose for that, which I can explain in a minute, but yeah, we're getting ready to really get very busy.
Yeah, excellent. And obviously the hints in the name, Valero Jimenez, there might be, as you sort of alluded to, quite a few Spanish ties there, and therefore access to, very high quality Pedro Jimenez barrels, which the early Joadja releases were very much what we came to associate with the distillery. Now, batch 10, however, is very different in terms of its makeup. And, before we get into the whiskey itself, when did you sort of want to do a paddock to bottle release as a distiller? Was that always on the cards, or is it something you thought around during the way?
Yes, certainly always on the cards. The main look, what happened was there was a Tasmanian distiller who came along to do one of the heritage tours probably 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not going to mention his name, but the point is that he came down to do a tour, and he was looking at the paddock we had there. And I had mentioned to him, I said, look, I'm wondering whether one day I may be able to replace the serrated tussock here with some barley. And he looked at the paddock and he said, no, I don't think you're going to grow any barley here. I don't think you're going to be able to. And I just kept quiet. But then probably 3 or 4 years ago, I had a local fellow who's been growing barley in New Zealand for about 30 years. And he said, look, you get a crop out of it. It won't be high yielding. So if it's for commercial produce, it's not really worth it. But then I thought, well, look, we're not after yield. We're after flavor. We're after something unique. And that's really what we've gotten. So 3 or 4 years ago, we put down our first crop. And of course, very low yielding, but fairly unique. It's certainly the flavors that we get out of it, certainly mashing in, the aromatics are different. You don't, the sweetness that you normally get, you can tell it's a little bit different. And so that's what we thought, look, let's let Joadja dictate where our flavor goes. Very much experimental, very high risk, but certainly paying off a little bit, because this, as you mentioned before, this is our first non-sherried expression. We've done 12 whiskies over the past couple of years, or releases if you like. And this one is the first of the non-sherried. And certainly the purpose for this was to allow the first of the paddock to bottle. In other words, this is the barley that was harvested in December 2017. And we thought, let's see what the grain does. So rather than have the sherry put a little bit of bias to it, let's just keep it more neutral, go for the ex-bourbon. And that way people can really see, this is Joadja, this is the grain, this is what we get growing here. on our paddocks. So that's where that story came from. Let Joadja dictate, and also stay away from the sherry for a moment to let the grain shine through.
100%, and that's like I'm such a huge fan of that, and it disappoints me sometimes when you get a Scottish distillery who've got XYZ type of barley from XYZ farm, and then it's clouded by some fortified cask, and it could have been from anywhere. But I think Springbank do it really well with the local barley. Shelter Point out of Canada do it really well with their releases as well. And this release, the first thing you get off it is rich malt and those barley notes and that farmyard notes. And I don't know what Joadja barley tastes like until you drink this and you go, this is what the whiskey is, and this is sort of the sense of place. Because Joadja in itself, is a very historic site and those sort of things. And so, when you taste this, does this smell and taste like what it from just working in the distillery and being around that town?
Well, certainly, because I work in a distillery, certainly it will. Whether I can pinpoint or say, look, I can detect Joadja, a little bit difficult because we've had only 3 expressions or 3 releases that have been from Joadja malt, and the others were sherried. In fact, a little complex because they were Oloroso, started off in fact in Oloroso, but they were actually second fill 32-litre barrels. And by 18 months, it got a little bit heavy. And so I pulled it out and said, let's put the brakes on this, put it in a bourbon. So releases number 11 and 12 were sort of reversed. Normally, as you know, you'll start them off in bourbon barrels and finish them in sherry or whatever. And here I did it the other way around. But the point I'm making is a bit difficult for me to determine or to say to you whether I can pick that difference. So the same spirit, by the way, same grain, same harvest, different barrels, and they're different. And I think the difference is, as you mentioned before, sometimes you can get the sherry or the fortifieds masking, for lack of a better expression, masking or putting a bit of a spin on away from the grain. And so at the moment, the bottom line, too early to tell. A little bit like the American election.
Yeah. Are you expecting to get a harvest every year now? And what percentage of what you're distilling will come from Joadja barley?
Good question. So so far we've got at the moment we've got our 4th crop down. So there's still. So this is of course crop number 1, if you like. We have 2 and 3 under barrel. In December, in the next month, literally next month, we'll be harvesting our 4th. And of course, it varies a little bit. In the harvest for 2019, we had drought, a much smaller grain, but much cleaner grain. So the interesting thing for us is that rather than consistency, which a lot of people do want, and we want to do that as well, the releases that we do, which are paddock to bottle, are a little bit special. So that way we can say, look, this is what Joadja grows. And then of course we get commercial grain from places like Voyager Malt and others that will supplement that. But to answer your question in terms of percentage, at the moment, we've only got 10 acres now, which is not a lot by any stretch and very low yielding. We've got another 15 acres we're preparing right now for next year. And so that will, at the moment, reflect only probably 10% of the capacity. But very soon we'll be ramping up with a bit of some upgrades in equipment. It'll only be a very small amount, probably 5% or even less of our capacity here.
Yeah, right. I love, like, we're up, obviously up a little bit in terms of ABV, 62.9, but I love that back palate where those sugars, and maybe it's a little bit because I've just had a bit of Black Cat, which has that toffee thing, and the Remnant has that, rich caramel, but it's like a white sugar rather than that sort of brown sugar, that very bright, vibrant barley sweetness coming through. Couple of comments coming through as well. Both Raf and Sean love the PX that you create as well, which is, it's not sherry, obviously, made in Australia. So that would be a Pedro Jimenez fortified wine, I guess is what you'd call it as. But yeah, I mean, like, what's next for Joadja? If not necessarily in the paddock to bottle, but this time next year, if we're sitting in the same place, what does the previous 12 months look like?
Well, certainly this time next year, we'll be looking at releasing the second crop, but also some more commercially acquired grain. but more importantly, we start looking at softening things a little with our early expressions. Of course, here in New South Wales, and in particular, Joadja, particularly the earlier barrels, much smaller barrels, the diurnal temperature fluctuation in temperature really gets extraction very quickly. And of course, which is good for us because we made small mistakes in the earlier days, but we're trying to make sure we fine tune that. Managing our wood, managing our barrels is really key. And I can tell you that as we move forward, this time next year, we should be able to be tasting whiskies that are still very much Joadja, still some fortifieds there, but a little bit softer, a little bit more sophisticated, if you like, as we fine tune how we manage our barrels.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just speaking from personal experience, and I haven't tried every release, but I've tried a fair few and a few cast samples leading up. It's another distillery that is getting better with each release, from my personal palate. And I think that's testament probably not only to your distilling, but also understanding how spirits work with barrels and in those sorts of things. How do you find it? I mean, in terms of, years down the track, like what are the biggest skills that you think you've developed? Is it on the blending side? Is it on the distilling side? Is it matching spirit to barrels? Like what's been the biggest growth for you, do you think?
I think that's a really good question. I think, I'm always learning. So learning that there is so much more than just one part of the distillery. Every single part has some input or affects the spirit, affects the flavor that you get. And so for me, the biggest single thing that I've learned is to really listen and watch every single component of how you put things together to make sure that you manage what's going to come up at the end. Remember, it's a very risky business. Putting down a lot of barrels, it costs money, and you've got to make sure that 2, 3, 4 years down the track, you're going to have something that you can put to the market and it's not going to damage your brand. And so for me, to answer your question, really, really taking every part of the business very carefully, very seriously, and make sure that you eliminate any potential problems. Every part of it.
Yeah, no, it's not a cheap game, and it's another reason why I am on this side of the business and not that side of the business, because this is far less risk, it's far more risk averse to be just drinking and having fun. But I think it's really important to step back and acknowledge, that this is a paddock to bottle single malt whiskey. They're very, very few and far between anywhere in the world, let alone in Australia, in the relative youth of our modern and contemporary whiskey industry. So I think it's an absolute testament to you and the whole team down there. We're coming into what is hopefully going to be a far more stable and less exciting summer period. Joadja's open for business, and in terms of tours and people throughout, leading up, but also January and February next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So the distillery is open every Saturday and Sunday from 10 till 5. Tours and tastings at the moment are certainly free. We do it on spec. If you're going to come all the way out here down that dirt track, we really anticipate that you're going to be enjoying something special and hopefully support us. But the point is, we are now looking at doing, I think Brian mentioned before, online we'll start to open opportunities for people to come along. If they're nearby, they can call, we'll open the gate. We're on 1,000 acres here. Leaving the gate open can pose some security issues, and some people just drive through thinking that it's it's a thoroughfare. They're just going to go drive through and end up at a dead end. So the point is, Monday to Friday, you can either call ahead or go online and ask for us to open the gate for you. Otherwise, Saturdays and Sundays, come on down.
Yeah, and roughly, like say, there's a lot of people in Sydney at the moment, and in all capital cities, thinking, why the hell do I live in a capital city anymore when I can work from home? How roughly on a good day, what's the drive time like from Sydney to Joadja?
Okay, say from South Sydney to, let's say, the city to Joadja Gate, an hour and 40 minutes if you don't experience too much traffic. Worst case, a little under 2 hours.
Yeah, so absolutely no time at all. And mate, thank you for that whiskey and that description, because it's a very, very special whiskey and a very good tasting whiskey. And then once you've had a night in Joadja, stayed in some local accommodation, get back in the car and keep going south, And roughly how long is it from Joadja to Corowa, Dean Juice?
Oh, that'd be about 5 hours, Valero.
I think so.
It has been fantastic, Dean, watching the sunset behind you. Made me very, very jealous by seeing locked in the back of a bottle store tonight. But the weather looks exceptional still.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit colder, but it's not too bad down here. I think it's behind us right here is about where Brian and Janice come and stay. So if there's any other distillers, consumers, anyone like that wants to come down and stay here and drink whiskey with us, they're more than welcome, except for the Atwoods. They're definitely not welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, Atwoods is banned. But it does look like, don't all come at once, because it looks like you might be a bit crowded. It doesn't look like you have too much space out the back there.
Well, out the back is actually the Victorian border. So you're not allowed over there. But, we've got a little bit of room in Corowa.
Yeah. I mean, so for those who aren't aware, Corowa right on the border on the Mardi Murray. Been an interesting year for anyone living on the border anywhere across that divide. How is life in the bubble? And do you know what normal people look like anymore?
We're probably very fortunate where we, because we're deemed an essential service, we can still get about. So we're moving. I was in Adelaide this week. I was in Sydney a couple of weeks ago. I still get out and see people, but I really do fear for those people down in Melbourne. What they're going through is absolutely horrific, and I think everyone who's come out of it from Melbourne, they we'll give them as much support as we possibly can if and when they do come up and see us.
Yeah. And we've seen a bit of as I sort of alluded to with Valero then, a bit of an exodus from people who have been forced to work from home and then realised, why are we waiting till retirement to move up or down the coast and do that when we can do it straight away? So particularly probably more from Victorians and people who live in Melbourne, what are property prices in Corowa like at the moment?
Yeah, they're hard to handle. When I moved to Corowa, the property prices, I couldn't believe how cheap they were, and now they're going up ridiculously. I think in the last 2 months it's gone up 18%. Oof. So still affordable for someone like you, Scott, coming down here. So don't worry.
That's right. I'll sell my little lilo that I use in the corner here where I sleep and see what I can get for that, and might give you a call. But it has been out of like all the distilleries. In terms of regular production, Corowa, almost from an oak barrels perspective, has been one of the busiest through 2020 with a whole bunch of single cask releases and that sort of thing. And that's where we're sitting on tonight with barrel 250. We have seen a huge uptake. Like we can barely keep them on the shelves here. How has it been for you guys? And was single casks something that you planned from the outset, and what defines a single cask release? Like what's the thought process there?
Yeah, so we had a very clear plan right from the start, exactly where we wanted to be situated in the market, where we wanted to be, how we wanted to release. And everyone always comes up to you and says, oh, you should do this. And, everyone's a whiskey expert, as we know, but we knew exactly where we wanted to be, but it was time that we had to really allow ourselves to get these other whiskies on the market, then get the Corowa characters onto the market, at that cheaper price point. I think, I could be wrong, but I think we've released 6 single cask whiskies since the June long weekend. So June the 11th. And they're all going really well. So we've only got currently one that hasn't sold out. And that's the one we released on Saturday. So it's going really well. We've got some really unique things down, probably, our Achilles heel, and also, something that can become really great for us is we love experimenting, and we love, not pushing the boundaries of the laws of whiskey, but, what people see as traditional casks, we're well and truly happy to venture outside the square there, even to the point where you were talking before about the 2 guys there that have got paddock to bottle. We've definitely gone down that road as well. We're currently mashing and distilling organic whiskey at the moment. And our family farm being the oldest organic farm in Australia. So we're very fortunate there as well. We just haven't released it yet.
I did hear rumors about that, but that's very, very exciting to hear confirmation. And it does sort of lead me to the question for the people in the group is that, Janice, when are you kicking Brian out into the farm to start laying some barley down at the back there?
I'm lucky to get him working in the shed. There's no way I'm going to get him out.
I can just see him like just putting, one barley grain, next barley grain, then a little hole with your finger, put one in, do another one, put one in. Getting back to very serious things, obviously, because that's what we're all here for. It's all very serious stream, this one. This is a single barrel 250 in bourbon and then red wine cask. Now, just what you were sort of talking about there, you have pushed the boundaries a little bit this year with some pretty crazy stuff and sort of the emergence of the peated whiskey. With these single casks, when you're laying this stuff down, are you going, this is going to be a single cask at some point? Or are these things that would have ended up in other places that you've gone, nah, hold on, that's going to highlight by itself?
Yeah, so there's a little bit, like you've always got a thought pattern and thinking this is a chance of being a single cask, but you can never tell until, you're getting close to that 2-year mark and you start re-looking and revisiting these casks and you go, look, that's going really well. And then there's other ones where you think, oh, I can't wait to try this. This is going to be amazing. How good's this going to be? And it just never works out. But we've got, I think there's one, Bo will kill me if I tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. We put down whiskey probably late 2018, and my thought was this is going to be like just something really, really cool, something out there that other people have going to have done it, but this is where we're going to be happy. So we did our regular peated whiskey that we have released a few of, and we put it in a fairly heavily charged Chardonnay barrel, and it is just one of the best tasting. Obviously very biased, but one of the best tasting barrels I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and Bo is obviously the distiller down there at Corowa, who you might know with quite insane dreadlocks. And it's always good to be hosting a tasting in the same room as Bo, because then it means that I'm the person that needs a haircut the most second in line, when normally I'm the one who needs it most. I'm second when Bo's in the room. But, so like that's quite interesting with, very heavily charged Chardonnay casks. And I guess this is one to go to the whole room a little bit. Is there anything now that is not off limits, but is like the world open now for barrels? Is there any sort of anything that you won't touch, or will you experiment with anything? I know, for me, probably the most unique cask that came out of Corowa this year was the maple syrup cask, which I didn't know maple syrup went into barrels until it turned into a whiskey, which probably says a little bit more about me than anything else. But is there anything that you guys won't touch at the moment, or?
Red gum.
Okay, controversial.
Mainly because someone else has got one.
Yeah. Brian, is there any cast that you have gone, or maybe, and then gone, maybe not, for that sort of thing?
Sorry. No, I think more in terms of what I want to use, where the direction we're going in. So, we're not big innovators either. We don't go into these wacky sort of casks. But I'm just going for that cleaner sort of less cask influence. That's why I've gone to bourbons. So I don't think in terms of what I won't use, but more of.
Peter, I know you're not allergic to experimentation at all. Is there any cask that you've seen that you've gone, actually, no, I don't want to do that?
Well, yes, I'm just opposite to everybody else, or well, not everybody else, most others. I just don't use port and sherry casks. That's for the rye, that is. Yeah, we have quite a few in the remnant they've been port and sherry or Australian fortifieds anyway. But no, the rye, I think those port and sherry flavours are just going to hide the rye too much. So I just don't use them. I think I've got one sherry cask here in the whole distillery, and that's got an oak whiskey in it.
Yeah. And Valera, you're pretty, obviously you have that very big tie to Spain, but using bourbon casks. Are you pretty locked into that sort of regime at the moment?
Yeah, well, yes, basically we are at the moment because it takes so long to experiment that we sort of really honing our skills on managing sherry barrels very well. When we talk about sherry, I know a lot of the viewers generally out there will understand that Pedro Ximenez or PX barrels are very popular and Oloroso, but what we're actually doing now is going further, still sherry, but we've got what we call amontillado, palo cortado, fino. So we're pushing those boundaries now. I tasted a fino sherry, a whiskey matured in a fino cask, which is again a Palomino grape, very different to other sherries, and it blew my mind. It was just incredible. So yes, to answer your question, we're going to stay with sherry for a little bit, but remember we still do bourbon casks because they really do allow us to again stay a little more neutral and show that we can make good spirit, that it's not going to be overwhelmed by the sherry, because sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming.
I've had some excellent whiskies matured in Fino casks.
Yeah.
I remember quite vividly a 1966 Glenfarclas in Fino, and I don't expect Joadja to recreate a 1966 Glenfarclas overnight, but that is what potentially might happen in the future. But going back to this whiskey, we're on a single cask. We're at 62.2%, so we're not mucking around at all. Bourbon red wine finishes. Are finishes quite common at Corowa at the moment, or is it just a case-by-case situation?
They are a little bit. Some casks need finishing, and a lot of them don't. But we knew early on that if we put down a lot of bourbon casks, we could then finish them in something else, depending upon what flavours we felt like that particular cask needed. So this one here is it's towards the end of the run when we do peated for a month every year. So it's not as heavily peated as we have done in the past, but it's just at the end of it. We had it in a bourbon cask, and then we switched it out to a Barossa Shiraz cask.
Yeah, there's something about, obviously a few of the peated casks have different wood finishes, and so they've been a little bit different. But there is that barbecue note, that very roasty note that's coming through. I hesitate away from using the agave word or the M word that comes along with that, but there are definite similarities in that very honest roasted smoke note that you get in this. Then obviously that sweetness sort of comes through, particularly on this one as well. Are you finding a bit of a theme from it's still very early days for your peated releases. Are you starting to see a theme in what's happening with them?
Yeah, we are. And especially with our peated releases that we have released so far, the majority of them are French oak port casks. So that port tends to dominate over the top a little bit. And even to the point where this one, it's got a fair bit of that spiciness in there from the Shiraz cask. So it has dominated over the top. Whereas you go and try the Jack Daniel's cask peated release, and you'll see a lot more of that new make sort of shining through, or the style of the distillery shining through. Rather than the domination of a cask, which is probably not necessarily what we want to be known for, but seems to be where we've gone for the peated releases recently.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, they've been an absolute standout for me in terms of and opened my eyes a little bit about what Corowa can be and where it's going with all those different variations. A couple of questions there in terms of what can we expect moving forward in the next 12 months from Corowa, and do we get a discount on weddings if Peter is the celebrant?
Peter being the celebrant. Look, I think...
Or do you pay more for that?
Look, I think the experience of being around Peter, whether it's been a part of... in the whiskey crowd or having him as your celebrant, I think it's priceless. So you probably don't get a discount. It's probably going to charge you more, but I think it's worth every dollar. That's my opinion.
That's good to know. I'll take a commission from this as well, please. Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
But next 12 months, obviously there's a few of the core lines locked in, like Characters, and Mad Dog and Boscovert and that sort of thing, and then these single barrels, more of the same, and then more experimentation in the single barrels, or what can we expect in the next 12 months?
Yeah, so you will definitely see a lot more single casks coming up. We also have the release of then a regular peated line coming out. So I don't know how far away that is, but that's something we've been working on. And then also a straight bourbon line. So we're still coming to finalising the artwork and the labels and all that sort of stuff. So it'll slowly get there.
Yeah, excellent, mate. And it must have been, obviously as we've mentioned, there's been a lot of, tough stories throughout the year. But anyone who has sort of been involved in or is involved in some sort of like tourist trade has had a pretty tough 12 months. So it's a testament to you and the team down there for sticking together and keeping it all. I mean, how was the vibe amongst this very family orientated business? How are Bo and Neil and everyone? Are they keeping happy?
Yeah, they're not. I mean, if you piss Bo off, well, geez, you've really gone out of your way to annoy someone, because I've tried for a long time, like his favourite football team. I try and pin them down, but look, he just sort of very resilient sort of guy. The reason I was a little bit late tonight, I was actually out to dinner with some of our staff. So, it has been a tough time, and we've got 36 staff at the distillery. So we try and keep them all as happy as we possibly can. And if it's taking them out to dinner, it's taking them out to dinner. So, it has been really, really tough for us down here. But like I said previously, we're not the ones that are doing it really tough. Those people in Victoria, my goodness, some of the times they've been through is just ridiculous.
Yeah, 100%. And, we can't quite get there yet. I think November 23 is when the first soft, border comes down. And then hopefully, certainly by next year, we'll be able to go there without staying for 14 days in hotels and that sort of thing. But I'm thinking the best way to get from Sydney to the furthest far away one at the moment is Peter there, is via car to Melbourne, and then via plane, via places like Blackgate and Joadja and Corowa, obviously bypassing Yakandanda as quickly as possible and not stopping in case anyone waves at you out the window. But straight down
that's the best for everyone's mental health, I think, bypassing Yakandanda.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree with you there. They don't even have their own bakery anymore. Beechworth own that. That's a disaster. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a tough year for everyone involved, and those drinking at home as well. What you guys do is liquid sunshine. You put smiles on people's faces, and you've certainly all put a smile on my face talking about whiskey and having a bit of a chat, which is something we've all missed. There's some people here I haven't been in the same room with for a very long time, which is very unusual. And a lot of the people particularly in the Zoom chat, people that you would run into at Whiskey Fair and, say good day to once a year. So I do appreciate you taking the time out this evening to have a bit of a chat and keep up making the good stuff. Because it's very, very enjoyable, and we do appreciate it a lot from this end. We appreciate your hard work. We may not chip in to do it or volunteer to do any hard work, but we do appreciate it. Before I let everyone go, I do want to answer a quick question that came through on the chat from Mike that says, from an outlets and a retail point of view, how do you decide what Australian whiskey goes on the shelf? And it's a very good question, because 5 years ago, it was whatever you could get your hands on. You maybe got one allocation of Sullivan's Cove a year, and even Starwood was hard to keep hold of, and maybe Lark once a month. And so that was a very easy decision. These days, it's very, very difficult because there are so many Australian whiskies out there and so many new things coming onto the market. And I think the answer to that question is what you've heard in this room tonight. People who are passionate about what they do, that are doing it for the right reasons, and there's stories and there's reasons behind their whiskies. Obviously, the first test is the flavor test. If it doesn't taste good, then it's not going to pass that. But once you get beyond that, it's the people behind the whiskey and are they doing it for the right reasons and all that. So I think that question I was saving till the end because it is an example of what we've heard here tonight. So teams, thank you very much. I hope to buy you all a drink in some fine establishment somewhere in Australia in the not too distant future. But I do really appreciate your time and everything that you do for us.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Scotty, for running this show and all the shows you run every week. Well done.
Mate, it's very easy for me, I promise you. Very, very easy. The definition of this is what it's called, keeping me out of trouble.
Thanks, Scotty.
Cheers.
Thanks, Scotty.
Thanks, and we might kill the Facebook stream. So thank you for all the comments that came through there, and we will speak to you all very soon. There will be hopefully another get together before the end of the year. There's just a few other things that are falling into place at the moment, so I've kept that day a little bit fluid, but we'll be announcing very soon with the lineup and everything. But thank you for watching.